In the last video, you were shown how to enter the data into the TI84 calculator. And once you have the data in the calculator, the exciting thing we can do with it is we can calculate some statistics. So I've typed the total number of deaths from the year 2000 to 2012. I did not put the total in because that's not really a data point, that's just the total, and I only want to enter the data points into the lists. And what I'm going to do now is I am going to hit the Stat button. And when I hit the Stat button, I get the same menu I got before, except for this time I want to go over to Calculate, or Calc. And this is where we go when we want the calculator to do some calculations for us. And I'm going to select one var stats. That's short for one variable statistics. I only have one variable here, right, the total number of deaths. And I want the statistics for that one variable. So I'm going to enter, and on these new calculators they give you this menu here. And it just so happens to be right. I have my list in L1, which is what I want, but let's pretend for a second it was blank, or maybe it's not the right list. To make it the right list, what you want to do is you want to notice first of all that the L's are all in blue here. L1 is over 1, L2 is over 2, so on and so forth. So in order to get any of these blue options, we hit this blue second button. This blue second button is much like a shift key is on the keyboard. So I'm going to hit the second button in 1, and it's going to show us list 1. And I'm going to skip frequency list for now. And then I'm going to go down to Calculate, and I am going to hit Enter. And when I get this, I'm going to get a whole bunch of statistics, and I'm going to show you what each of these mean. We're going to talk about what each of these are. This first symbol here in this first line, this X with the bar over it, that is what statisticians use to signify the average or the mean of a variable. So if you see any lowercase letter, usually an X but sometimes a Y, or sometimes an A or a B or whatever, with a bar over it, that is the average or the mean. This next line here is we have a funny looking symbol here, which is a Greek letter, a Greek capital sigma. And sigma is the notation that mathematicians and statisticians use for adding them all up. And then we have the little X here. This is what would happen if we added all these data points up. Now the interesting thing here is that I'm getting a different answer, or the calculator is getting a different answer than the textbook. So one of them is wrong, and I guess if you can figure it out and email me who made the mistake, either me with the typo or maybe the textbook with the typo, that would be greatly appreciated. So the next line, the sigma with the x squared, that means very similar, but first what they do is they square all these numbers, so multiply it by itself. 231 squared is whatever, 21,357 squared is whatever. And then they add up all those square numbers, and as you might imagine, that's going to be a pretty big number, because some of these numbers are quite big, so when we multiply them by themselves, they're going to get really large. And if you can see, we have this little E thing here afterwards. That's the notation for scientific notation. That means we have to take this decimal place and move it 11 spots to the right. So it's actually a quite big number. This SX is the standard deviation of the sample. This little crazy looking symbol here, this is a lowercase sigma Greek letter. That is the standard deviation for the population. N is the number of data points. Makes sense, right? We have the years 2000 through 2012. That should be 13 data points. Min X is the minimum. So it looks like the minimum number of deaths was this 231, and if I look at this list I can't see a smaller number, so that makes sense to me. Q1 is the first quartile, so that means about 25% of the years have deaths less than that and 75% bigger. MED is the median, the middle number. Q3 is the third quartile. Max X is the maximum, the biggest number of deaths. So yeah, and if you want, you see this arrow key, you can scroll back up if you forgot what the mean was and you want to check it out. And you get all these statistics about this data set that you entered in.